Okay. 1 minute. Okay, we're getting ready. Sis Donna, I'm just getting a notification.
Whew.
And we are live. Hey, I want to welcome everyone to a special edition of Off the Record. This afternoon, we have a very great guest, a very humble guest, and one who has helped lay the foundation of which we stand on for all of these years. She's been in the work for quite some time. And Sister Donna, I just want to say Assalamu alaikum, first of all.
Walaikum salam, Brother Joshua.
Yes, ma'am. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come have a conversation with us. Sister Donna, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as taught by the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
Well, it's really funny because before I actually heard the teachings, when I was in college in 1988, at a little small college in Georgia, West Georgia College, I was the minority affairs chairperson. I was a student, and I wanted to, my last year there, I really wanted to make a big production of Black History Month and really bring a phenomenal speaker to the campus. And the funny thing is, and I was in school with Ryan Cameron, which you probably know because you're there in Atlanta.
Yes,
We were
ma'am.
classmates.
Yes. Okay.
He was just a year older than me. And so he said, well, why don't you bring Farrakhan to campus? Okay. But yeah, here's the funny part. I had never heard of Minister Farrakhan at that time. So, and I had never even heard a name like that. And my response to him was, we don't have no money to be bringing somebody over here from Africa.
Yeah.
That's what I associated the name with.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, but that was the dropping of the seed. That was the first dropping of the seed. And then I went to, I had a friend that graduated who's another media person there, Shania Chavis. She was Shania Chavis at the time, another one of our classmates at West Georgia. And I was at her graduation, and there was a Muslim there, her graduation party. And he had mentioned something about the Nation of Islam or what have you. Again, another seed planted. Then student minister, formerly Tony Muhammad, now Minister Malik in LA.
Yes, ma'am.
He was doing these series of classes at Georgia Tech every Thursday night. And it was just called self-awareness classes. And it was, by then I had graduated college, but I was dating a brother that was in college at Georgia Tech. And so we heard about this, the Qs were hosting it. And so we started going. And we didn't know that what he was doing was really bringing us into the structure of the nation through those classes. He was teaching us why to open up in prayer. He even taught us a little bit about drill. He taught us some security techniques. He had us doing a little bit of martial arts, but mainly he was talking into history and the teachings.
Yes, ma'am.
And he did it in such a skillful way.
Okay,
so after a while, we were like, where are you getting this from? You know, we want more. And we asked him to mentor us one-on-one. Like, will you mentor us one-on-one? So we had meetings with him on an additional day at a place called Crickets. And if you're from Atlanta in a certain time, you know about J.R. Crickets downtown.
Okay.
So we went through that. And then, you know, it was more compelling, like, where did you get this from? And so he directed us to the mosque. So many students at that time, so many people that we know now that are standing up came through him at that time. Brother Corey in Chicago, Dr. Wesley, Brother Wakil, Brother Bernard, all of them, they were students were very active. And so he's actually the one who fished me in. He directed us to the mosque, and Minister Van was the minister. And I went, and I had never actually heard a full lecture or anything like that by Minister Farrakhan at this time. I still hadn't heard. So I came under the voice of one of his students, which is why we should never take lightly anybody in front of us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And then in 1990, Minister Farrakhan came and did the Added Up, the reparations lecture. And Minister Tony made sure we had VIP seats on the floor. So we went to hear him. And at the end, he did the Shahada. And I was still, before I knew it, I just was pulled to my feet. I really didn't know what I was saying, what I was doing, but I was just like, I have to do this. And I went in to to do orientation, which is nothing like it is today. We've evolved so far, but Sister Zuhira was the captain at the time, and it was real kind of informal. We would sit and talk, and I just started coming more, and it wasn't very long. It didn't take me very long to hear it in late into 1990 to decide this is absolutely what I want. And I was encouraged to go to Savior's. I wasn't registered yet, and it was October. That was when we were still observing Savior's Day in October. We observed it in February and October prior to the Million Man March. And we I wasn't going. I hadn't been in that much, and I didn't know the impact and the significance of Savior's Day. But I remember going to the mosque and people getting excited about it. And I was young. I didn't have much money either. I was about 25. And Brother Joe X Friday at that time and his wife, Sister Barbara, who worked at the agriculture department.
Yes, ma'am. I'm familiar.
They put me in a van with their family. And we drove to Detroit. Savior's Day was in Detroit at Cobo Hall. Another sister, Sister Roberta, said, you can stay with me. And so I crashed in her room. And in her room, she taught me prayer, how to make salat. And I experienced my first Savior's Day before I was ever registered. And all that did was instill it even more. And I quickly came back, wrote my letter, studied, did what I had to do, recited what I needed to recite, and went to work. But because it was the early 90s, and it was still early on, even though the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan stood back up in 77, early 1990 was still an early part of the rebuilding phase. So we traveled a lot. The minister was doing Stop the Killing tours and other tours. We traveled a lot. So I was getting put on post before I was ever registered. I remember taking up charity, but it was funny because I didn't know much. I wasn't registered. I didn't know. And I had on my white garment, but I had on black shoes. I didn't know anything about putting things together.
Yes, ma'am.
And I remember Sister Bessie Jean, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's daughter, was our captain at that time. And she came up to me and she looked at my shoes with my white. And it was, I wanted to melt into the floor. She corrected me. But we did a lot of those things because we were still just coming along, getting ourselves together. But I was grateful for those times because that bonded me quickly with the sisterhood and brotherhood because we were traveling together. Many of us doing things before we ever registered. And so that's kind of how I came in. And then again, as I said, Minister Van was the minister at that time. And our FOI captain was a part of the Minister Security team, Captain Sadiq.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd be pleased with him, was a member of the security team too. So it was an exciting time. Things were going on around the world, the Gulf War. It just was an exciting time.
Praise be to Allah, and thank you for that, for your answers. I want to say, Brother Jamari said checking in from Hartford, Connecticut. Thank you, sir. Walaikum salam, Sister Miriam. Brother Earl, always showing love. Thank you, Brother Earl, as well. And thank you all for watching Top 5. Yes, ma'am. For Off the Record. Now, Sister Donna, I have a quick question about what was it like? I got to backtrack to Ryan Cameron. Did you ever follow back up with him later down the years, or after y'all graduated, y'all separated? And then it was
we stayed in communication for a little while after we graduated. But after I registered in 1990, I moved. I graduated in 88. I registered in 90, and I moved away to DC 8 months after I registered. So we weren't too much in contact then. He went on into the radio industry. And so a few years later, I think I reached out to him when I was getting married, just to let him know, oh, I'm getting married. And we talked about that briefly. And then time passed again. But recently we had reconnected in preparation for 10-10-15. It was actually under the media tent. Because they were carrying V103 I think it was V103, and that is station now. I'm not there.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Was carrying the broadcast live. So that was actually the first time that we had physically seen each other in years. It was just, now and then little communications through social media, seeing him what he was going. But I remember I sent him a message through Facebook, I think it was, maybe about right before 10, shortly before 10, 10, 15, maybe 1 or 2 years before that. And I told him, I said, you were the first person that I ever heard the name Farrakhan from. And I joked about why. Because he used to call me, I was a Kappa sweetheart, and my line name was Woodstock. Because he said I looked like the little bird Woodstock.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So that was my name. And we joked about that. I said, but I am forever grateful for Allah putting in you the person to hear that name for the first time. I say, I am where I want to be, and I've never been more happier in my life. And so he thanked me for that. But yeah, 10, 10, 15 was the first time we actually physically saw each other. So that was nice. It was like a reunion. And I think I posted some pictures of that up on Facebook. And I followed his career a little bit off and on. And he had shared how he had just had breakfast with the minister that morning. And then a week later, he was back in DC to interview President Obama, as a matter of fact.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
At that time.
Now you said, I didn't want to cut you off, but you said you were line sisters. I didn't know you were a member of a sorority. What sorority are you a member of?
Well, I wasn't a sorority. I was a Kappa sweetheart, a little sister. So I didn't flash. So he was a Kappa.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, yes, ma'am.
And he was a Kappa on campus, and I was a little sister. Even though they kicked me out, I guess I was always I could never just follow the normal path. So they took my shirt back and all that.
Oh, dang. Yes, ma'am. What was it like traveling with the Most High Mr. Farrakhan in the early days? And you told me that you were a part of his the team that traveled with the food and the being up close on him, like I guess giving the minister his food, or the serving team. I don't know what you all were called.
Yes, yeah, I was blessed to end up being that. Initially, we were traveling because, that's what we did in the 90s. All the believers were traveling. The minister was really going around the country a lot to stop the killing tours and the many different tours. So we were blessed to have an opportunity. I was living in DC. So we were blessed to really be able to go to a lot of cities and get to know the believers. And so, constantly traveling up and down. But one time, prior to Minister Farrakhan doing the Beethoven Symphony, his birthday celebration.
Yes, ma'am.
There was a small debut, if you will. I believe it was maybe it was 1993 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He spoke, and then he did a small performance. Well, I went down there with my sister captain at the time was Sister Nisa Islam, and my first officer, Sister Captain Sadaka, and Sister Latifa, who's in Virginia now, and was the MUI director, had restarted MUI in DC. And we went down to North Carolina. And I don't know how I got caught. It's one of those things that I guess a lot of places you in the right place at the right time. So we went to this house. There was this man, he was some type of maybe a politician or something in North Carolina. Well, he gave his whole house over that weekend to the minister and his security team. So they were staying at his house. And we were there. And I was told that we were going to serve him and his dinner guests. And so I thought I would die. We're not talking about a hotel suite. Like, this is physically somebody's house. So think about maybe in your home where the proximity of your dining room is to your kitchen. So they put up this screen in between the dining area where the guests were and the kitchen. And they said, well, you're going to serve the minister. Well, fear overcame me. I mean, and when I say I prayed in earnest, now, of course, hindsight is 20/20, and I wish I wouldn't have prayed the prayer that I prayed. But a lot of the best know it, but fear overcame me. And because I was like, I cannot I'm still relatively new in the nation. I'm clumsy, all of this. And I'm like, I'm not about to embarrass this man in front of his guests. So I was praying very hard. And Allah heard my prayers. And so I got relieved. I pleaded with Sister Latifah, please, please, if you will do it, if you will do it. Finally, after relenting to me, Sister Latifah became his server in that instance. So they said, well, you can come in the kitchen while we're preparing and doing dishes. Again, hadn't been in long, not very well trained. And this is a house. We're not talking about separate rooms.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm doing dishes, but I'm clanging pots and pans and all this stuff. They're there. The dinner guests are there. The minister's there. They're seated. And they're like, Sister Captain, Nisa, Sister Sadika, they're like, oh my God. So, I didn't know I'm being disruptive. So the security team, which your father was the supreme captain out there, Brother Abdul Sharif Muhammad. At that time, I don't even think he was Abdul Sharif Muhammad, Brother William. And the security team, the E-team, they were set up in the garage to eat. So they said, we'll tell you what, sister, you go in the garage. You serve those brothers out there. But I was so happy and so relieved because I didn't want to embarrass the minister, but I was still so rough around the edges. But when I got out in the garage, I felt so much more comfortable. So I tried to give the best service that I could out there because I was like, well, these are the men that are securing the minister. Yes, ma'am. And I did. And it was a wonderful feeling. And after that, we had another opportunity and I got called again. And I really thought, really? Like, you want me back? Yes, after that. But the time was very serious too. And security on the minister's food because things had been happening. And
one second, Sis Donna. I hate to interrupt you, but could you explain to me? You say things have been happening. Could you put us back in that time period to help us, frame what you're saying? What things were happening?
Because we got to know that the atmosphere was already tense. Because by this time, Madison Square Garden had taken place in 1980, and we know that during that time the Jews were calling for death to Farrakhan.
Yes, ma'am.
People were being, and if people have listened to your previous broadcast, they've heard where Brother Sultan, the minister's security, and Brother Haroon had been poisoned.
Yes, ma'am.
So
yes, ma'am.
Food was serious. We had lost our editor, Brother Wali, the great Brother Wali, through poisoning. So things were happening. That's how serious it was. So you have to be watchful. You have to be security minded because everybody doesn't want this message delivered. And just even serving, when we think in terms of serving, we don't think about the security factors, securing the food because anybody can get to the food. And so we had another opportunity because the minister was pleased. And eventually there came a time where Brother Sharif, at the time serving as the supreme captain, had talked about the minister, I guess, was pleased with the service. And he said, well, this is going to be the serving team because his cook wasn't traveling with him at the time. So as we were in the mid-Atlantic and he was spending a lot of time on the Stop the Killing tour, a lot of times, and the Let Us Make Man in preparation for the Million Man March, there was a lot of movement up and down the coast. So we started traveling as a team, cooking and serving the guest and the minister in his hotel suites in different scenarios. See, the thing about that, when you're in the middle of something, you don't realize the magnitude of it.
Yes, ma'am.
But looking back, hindsight, when you have the same group of people doing the same thing, then you can hold those people accountable. And so even just going into the room, like I could be in the suite and we might have to go down because we would usually have a room in the hotel as well so that we could have easy access to be able to do what we did. And we didn't usually leave and go to the venue. We would be there doing the prepping and preparing. So if I left the room the minister's room, the suite where we'd be serving, and maybe went to our suite to pick up something, to get something, and come back. I would have to go through checks, search the brothers, because we were getting to know each other. They didn't know us, and they certainly didn't know me.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm
Yes,
on
ma'am.
the E team. I'm talking about members of the E team.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
every time I re-entered that door, it was like I was coming into the hotel room for the very first time ever. I'm having to prove who I am. I have to prove that I'm allowed to leave. And I'm thinking, brother, you just saw me go out. Are we serious?
Yeah.
But I didn't understand the magnitude of it, because I could have went down the hall and did anything.
Yes, ma'am.
And got anything. So we had to check. But because of our love for the minister, we were checking each other too. And we had the blessing one time of the minister. At times, sometimes he would speak to us quietly, privately, when there were no guests around.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
he told us one time that he talked about us securing one another to secure him. And he said that you handle me like my wife would handle me when I'm gone. Because we were very serious, because nothing's going to happen on our watch in terms of this food. You're not going to poison this man. And so our rapport grew also with the members of the security team, as we all grew to see, okay, we're watching out for one another. We're checking one another coming through the door.
Yes, ma'am.
But it was a blessing. So we got a chance to see. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in those settings, the dinner settings, it's like, to me, I saw it as like a father with his children, teaching and training. That's why the dining table is an important location to teach and train the family. And so he would be teaching and training. He would ask questions. He would inquire about people in their family. Like, he had a genuine care and love. And I remember one time, it was one of the times when it was just 3 servers and him in the room, 3 of our servers, myself, a sister named Rashida out of DC, who was in Atlanta at one time too, and a sister named Hakima. And he took a moment to talk to us. There was nobody else around. And he asked if we were in courtship. And for those who are listening that may not be familiar with the Muslim process of courtship, it's the relationship that we enter when a brother and sister are interested in one another in a very civilized fashion that we have moved away from, but we've come back to through the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he asked us, were we in courtship, each one of us individually? And we said, no, sir. This was probably like 1992. He said, no, sir. And he said, what's wrong with these brothers? We don't know. Tell us. And he said, I'll tell you what's wrong. He said, when you know much, you require much. And then he admonished us. He said, do not lower your standards and maintain your chastity. And I was so overwhelmed, because I thought, here's a man that teaches thousands upon thousands of people.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Travels around the world, is received as a head of state, but he cared about 3 young sisters.
Yes, ma'am.
And our status and ourselves. And when I first came in the nation, my parents, they weren't fully embracing. Now, they didn't fight me like others have experienced, but they just kind of ignored it. They act like it didn't exist. And after that, I wrote my father a letter. And I shared that experience with him, just as I've shared it with you, and how much he cared about him. And I said, and you may disregard this part of my life, but it is here. And I need you to know, because I have a good father.
Yes, ma'am.
And he took care of his daughters. Daughters. So it's significant that there were 3 servers and his 3 daughters. And I said, he cares about me like you care about me. And that started turning my father's mind as well. So all I can say was a very beautiful experience. You learn a lot, and you also learn confidentiality.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Because you may be privy to something that may not be for public consumption at that time.
Yes, ma'am.
and you don't want to go out in front of the minister. So there were a lot of lessons. I learned to be more refined. You know, I learned you don't clang stuff around.
Yes, ma'am.
I learned not to move
Yes, ma'am.
a little bit more gracefully. I learned to be much more dignified just from those examples. I know that was a long roundabout way, and I hope that I answered your question.
I thank you for that. And I want to say welcome salam, Sister Annette Faiza Muhammad. Sister Annette, please check your inbox because I would like to interview you as well. Welcome salam, Sister April. And Sister Donna, I have a question, another question for you as well. You told me that you worked for NOI Security.
Yes.
Could you explain to us the what it was like working for NOI Security at that time, and what was the climate during that time?
That was a very interesting time. I had moved to DC just a few years after the Dopebusters had cleaned up Mayfair mansions and had begun to establish security firms. Excuse me, the NOI Security was established. And in fact, I was living with a sister. I lived with two sisters at a time who lived in Mayfair mansions after that, and who cleaned it up after the Dopebusters, who were the FOI. And I encourage us to, let me just put this plug in there. I encourage the believers to purchase the book that our editor, Richard Muhammad, wrote, because he was also original member of the Dopebusters.
Yes, ma'am.
And he tells the story, and this story needs to be included in our history classes. We got to know how that came about, and the strength and the power of the faith that they had under the current leadership of the captain at that time, Brother Abdul Sharif Muhammad, William Muhammad at that time.
Yes, ma'am.
Who went in unarmed into the largest open air drug market in the country.
Yes, ma'am.
That sat in our city's nation's capital. So they went in, they cleaned it up. Accolades came in from around the world for the work that they did. So I moved to DC just a couple of years after that. And I came to I was working part-time for the Respect for Life bookstore that Dr. Aleem had established, and Sister Yvette. And then I also started working for NOI Security, NOI SA as it was known. And I started in the Central Command post. Because by then quite a few contracts had been established, and most of them were centralized in housing projects in very rough areas, not the most pleasant of areas. I remember Clifton Terrace being one of the most volatile projects that the brothers patrolled. And we have to keep in mind, they were unarmed. We were not armed, because that is not our way. We don't believe in carrying weapons.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But they went in armed with the faith of God. And first of all, the beauty of NOI Security is that it provided employment for our people. So it was not just registered members of the Nation of Islam working for NOI Security, and it wasn't even just brothers. There were sisters and brothers, Black men and Black women, working for NOI Security on the different sites. So one, first and foremost, it provided employment. That is significant. Secondly, it allowed us to provide charity. They set up a system to where we could actually have charity taken out of our paychecks, just like how you have Social Security and everything else taken out of your paycheck.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We could have charity taken out of our checks, and it would be directly deposited to the mosque account. So NOI Security accounted for a lot of charity coming into Muhammad Mosque No. 4 to help support efforts to do more things.
Praise be to Allah.
So that was wonderful, doing the charity. So you had people who were not members of the Nation of Islam wanting to do that, wanting to give charity to the mosque. But during that time, also, NOI Security was under attack. But Representative Pete King came after NOI Security because we were becoming the recipients of HUD contracts.
Yes, ma'am.
The housing and Urban Development, is what HUD stands for.
Yes, ma'am.
And in truth, the Nation of Islam was buried. NOI Security, which was owned by Brother Sharif, not the nation, but the nation was a beneficiary of it. We're very well deserving of these contracts because we went into the community where our people were forgotten, where during the time of the largest open air drug market, we got to remember this was in the nation's capital of DC.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Daycare is not that far from the Capitol building, where they were not being effective, where elder people were afraid to come out of their homes. Children were not playing. It was on lock by drug dealers. And the Nation of Islam, the brothers of the FOI, they came in and cleaned that up and then commenced to clean up other areas. Who cared about us but us?
Yes,
Nobody.
ma'am.
So they're deserving because money goes out to any number of organizations under any number of nonprofit names and who aren't doing half the work, who are not doing half the work. So Pete King went to work to try to disconnect us from the funds and the support, though we're doing what the government dollars wasn't doing.
Yes, ma'am.
And so they started this concentrated attack on NOI Security. And then they tried to say we were discriminatory in our housing process, our hiring practice. So at this time, I had moved from being central control dispatch to I was actually working in the office, serving as front office receptionist. And there were rumors that they were going to start sending, because they tried to act like we would only hire Black people. So there were rumors that they were going to send in some white applicants. And so Brother Sharif said, fine, come on in. They can be hired. We'll give them the opportunity. And we'll send them to Clifton Terrace. And keep in mind, it's one of the roughest places.
Yes, ma'am.
We're unarmed. So you're not going in there armed because you got to go in there for the love of the people because you can't be mishandling them either. See, we didn't go into these places with the mindset of the police. Yes, it's to clean it up, but it's to clean it up, one, for the benefit of our people, but for the residents too.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't want to just change the mind of those who are inside their doors. We want to also help the people who are inflicting some of these crimes and atrocities on our own people because we know this is a learned behavior. We know where we got it from.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So that's the mindset we're going in. So you go in with that mindset too. But they never came. They never showed up. I did receive a call to set up interviews, but they never showed up. But it was so serious. The time was so serious that I had to get trained on how to detect like mail bombs while sitting there because of the attack, which, make no mistake about it, came from the Jewish community, which weren't doing anything for our people, but wanted to make sure that we could not do anything for our people. So it was an intense time during the early 90s to work at NOI Security. We are taught in the Nation of Islam, my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are all for Allah. So when you went to work every day, you had to go to work with the mindset of my life and my death are for Allah, which is for the people.
Allahu Akbar. Yes, ma'am.
But it was beautiful to be able to work for our own. I was employed by my own people.
Beautiful. Okay, I have a
and I remember one time though, because many people would call up there, and a phone call came in from Wesley Snipes one time. He called up there. He was looking for Mustafa, and it's funny because he is a great man. I love Wesley Snipes. Loved his movies and everything. But for me, my celebrities were members of the Nation of Islam.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
He called. He said he was looking for Mustafa, and he said, "This is Snipes." I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "This is Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes." I was like, "Okay." And And you could kind of hear this tone, like, okay, clearly you didn't hear what I said.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, years before, if he would have called and I won in the nation, I'd have been knocked off my feet.
Yes, ma'am.
But because I had a new set of heroes and celebrities, I was like, because in my mind, it's like I'm working for the company owned by the Supreme Captain of the Nation of Islam.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
That's big. So I was just like, okay, well, he's not here. You can reach him in Chicago. So that was funny to me, but many people called up there. It was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time.
Excellent. I want to quickly say and thank you. I want to thank you all for continuing to watch Off the Record. And I want to say walaikum salam to Sister Stephanie Muhammad. Walaikum salam, Brother Damien. Sister Minerva says, Assalamu alaikum. I agree with every word the sister spoke. I was at the position in the minister beginning to raise the nation again from Washington, D.C., area under your father and student minister Ali Muhammad. Sister Shahida Muhammad says, this is very touching, recalling the early 90s and the NOI, loving this. And thank you all for watching this. I would also like to say that this podcast is brought to you by ABC I Love Me, my sister Miriam's book on Amazon. Please get that. Also, my brother Rashad Muhammad and his business partner Jamal have a video production company called Street Premiere. Please, if you need anything with video production, please reach out to them. Also, my second book is Cleopatra. It is on Amazon as well. Thank you all for watching. All right, wonderful. Back to you, Sister Donna. Because I got to follow up with you on, you said mail bombs. Like when you're checking for a bomb in the mail, what is running through your mind at that time? I don't know what that's like.
Well, it could be a little unnerving. I mean, when they were talking to me about it, brother, I believe it was Brother Dion, who is now known as Brother Najim, at that time, who was serving as he was the head of the office there, the central office. And I'm trying to think of who it was. It may have been Brother Captain Tim, who is now in Atlanta. They were saying, this is important. Things are happening. So since you are responsible for receiving the mail, you're going to need to know how to start looking for signs of tampering, for mail bombs, suspicious packages coming through. Now, again, please remember, I'm newly registered. I registered in 1990. I heard the teachings in 90. I registered in 1991. So I'm a baby. I'm like maybe 2 years in, 2 years, 3 years, just a few years in.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, this is like for real, because when you're really in it, you feel it and you see, oh, there are really people who want to harm the minister and anything related to him. As the scriptures say, smite the shepherd and scatter the sheep.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
and
ma'am.
in the Revelations, that dragon goes after the seed, the remnant, the seed of the woman. That's us.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
yes,
each and every one of us. So when you start getting into these scenarios, you start to see, oh, this is real.
Absolutely.
There are people who want to inflict harm, who do not see the good that we're doing and want to do things against us. So when you have threats on the life of the minister, well, those threats become our threats as well. So you start to disrupt. So it became really real. I'll just put it that way. It became really real. And I was I had to call in the law because I'd be a little bit nervous. I'm feeling around the seal to see if there was like a thin line to feel for. You kind of hesitantly open the the mail.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
If it's a delivery, it's like, okay, did anybody order a package? I need to know before I'm even touching this.
Yes, ma'am.
This package. And even the door itself to NOI Security was secure. Like that was a secure door. It wasn't your typical office door. It was a heavy, secure door with a little hole. You weren't going to just walk up in there. But if you did walk up in there, you're not going to walk out.
Praise be.
It was a corporate office. It was beautifully designed and all that. It looked great. You come to visit, it looks beautiful, but just know you better come in the right mind and right spirit.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody in the office is a member of the Nation of Islam, and we all say, my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are all for Allah. So we had a great bond. We had a brotherhood and a sisterhood, but we were clear on the assignment. We were clear on the mission, and we all traveled with the minister.
Excellent. I'll walk by. Now, speaking of being in Washington, D.C., what was the climate like during the Million Man March?
I had moved back to Atlanta right before the Million Man March, but I was there leading up to. So DC, I was living there when DC was one of the stops on the Let Us Make Man tour in preparation for it. I actually had, I was at Jacob Javits Center in 1993 when Minister Farrakhan first talked about it. And it's interesting because our student minister, Anthony Muhammad, went over that history just today in the Sunday lecture. So y'all check back on the Facebook Live, Muhammad Mosque 55. He went into that history of it. So 94, DC was among one of the first stops. And I got pulled. That's how I actually got into media relations. Sister Beverly Muhammad was media relations in DC at that time. And she pulled me on to help her as we prepared for the stop in DC. And it was a lot. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. There was a lot to be done to galvanize the city and galvanize the people to prepare for this. But in the process, I had also actually moved back. So by the time the Million Man March rolled around, I was in Atlanta. But the atmosphere was, you felt it growing. You felt the surge of the people. So in DC, it was already beginning to be a beehive, but I wasn't there when it was fully coming about. So I can't speak too much into that, but just even leading up to the men only meetings, it was huge. It was electrifying, but it was a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights. We're still working at NOI Security. You have people coming in and out the city, officials coming in and out the city. DC was already always a city where a lot of people came through anyway.
Yes, ma'am.
Speakers, we had Dr. Khalid, a lot of people always came through. So we were kind of used to having people coming through the city all the time anyway. When I say people, I mean officials of the Nation of Islam. And a lot of laborers at the time were coming up out of DC too. So it was exciting. It was thrilling. You could tell, you could feel that you were becoming a part of something big, but because the pieces weren't all together yet, you couldn't see it until the fullness of that day. So we really, there wasn't a lot of time to sit back and reflect. We can reflect now because we have the hindsight, but it was just head to the grindstone, work, and making sure no stone was left unturned, that every person heard that this is what was happening in preparation. So it was exciting, but it was a lot of work. It was exhausting.
Yes, ma'am. Excellent. Now you spoke of Dr. Khalid. What was it like with you working with him, or what were your interactions with him like?
Well, I got to serve him. By then, again, I was a part of the serving team.
Yes, ma'am.
So it was an interesting experience because we said he was speaking at a location. I really don't remember where he spoke, but he spoke in DC. And then we hosted him for dinner at the mosque. And I think that was actually my first time serving. And I had the opportunity to serve him. And I was so amazed because, anybody that knows Dr. Khalid is like,
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No mercy. But at the dinner table, when he's seated, and he was so humble. And he was so grateful to the sisters for feeding him and taking care of his dining needs, and he was so appreciative of what we did. So that was really, in truth, that was my only personal encounter with him, but it was amazing to me because I got to see what it showed me is example, all of us have that side. There's that warrior side that is necessary in the fight, but there is that, you see the manners, the demeanor that the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad instill in us when we are taught Islam dignifies.
Yes, ma'am.
It was that statesmanship. And I just couldn't believe it. So I'm serving, I was sitting here thinking, wow, because by that time I think I'd only been registered maybe a year. And all that was going through my mind is, oh my God, I am sitting here serving dinner to Dr. Khalid Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that was the experience on that.
Wonderful. What was it like? You spoke with me and told me that you traveled to Africa and got to be in attendance at the Alex Haley Mosque. Could you explain it to us what that was like?
Yes, that was 1999, June of 1999. My husband and I had just got married on the 19th, and Minister Akbar, whom we want to give a shout out to and pray for his full recovery out of the hospital.
Yes,
but Minister Akbar was leading a tour, was doing one of his tours, his company Adventures Travels and Tours in Africa. And so we decided, well, we'll go to Africa for our honeymoon. And we decided that because at the time, Minister Ava was our Southern Regional Minister, the first minister to be over a mosque. In the Islamic world.
Yes, ma'am.
And she had told us once before, because she really focused on relationship and marriages while she was there serving as the Southern Regional Minister. And she said in one of her relationship lectures and in talking with her staff, because my husband was one of her assistant ministers, she said, when you go on your trip, on your honeymoon, celebrate your marriage, she said, don't come back to the mosque the next day. Talking about we in there, we soldiers. She said, do something different. Go somewhere. She said, because first of all, your mate looks different in a different place. You see people differently in different environments.
Yes, ma'am.
So we decided, okay, this is perfect timing. Let's go to Africa for this dedication. And my husband had not been out of the country yet. And we went, I won't even go into the story of what we went through to get his passport issued in the name of Muhammad and all that, and how we managed to get in the country with no visa, no shots or nothing. That was a journey in of itself. But it was on the occasion of the dedication of the Alex Haley Mosque. Alex Haley, we all know the history of him writing the autobiography of Malcolm X and writing Roots. And through his interactions with Malcolm, he was encouraged to trace his roots to show and prove that we were indeed Muslims.
Yes, ma'am. That
his forefathers were Muslims before coming to this country. And so he did that. And he found that the roots of Kunta Kinte were in the village of Jufere, his family line, which is off the coast of Gambia. And he desired for a mosque to be erected on the village. Jufere monies were put up, but the mosque never materialized. I can't give you the background on that, but Brother Brian E. Muhammad can definitely give you the background. But we know how sometimes things happen.
Yes, ma'am.
Funds disappear, and it never happened. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan decided that he would build this mosque that Alex Haley wanted. And this is why it's called the Alex Haley Mosque. And so it was erected. And I will post, if people go to my Facebook page and look through my photos, I actually have, I think, a picture posted up of the original mosque and what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan built. Now, the village of Jufre, I'm talking about huts with rusted tin shacks, which is also what the mosque was. It looks like it can hold maybe 20 people. And ironically enough, women at the time weren't permitted in that mosque. And if you can see the condition of it, because the mind had to be changed.
Yes, ma'am.
Towards women. So we went on this trip. It was a small delegation of people who were going on his tour and also to the dedication, along with, at the time, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was severely ill. As he has spoken before, he was given cancer, the radiation seeds, You can listen to the July 21st lecture. He talked about this. So his son Mustafa went to represent his father, Mother Farrakhan, and some of her daughters, Sister Maria, Sister Donna, and it was not, as I look back and reflect, there were not a lot of believers, a lot of people, period, on this trip. Minister Halim in Texas, Sister Iris, and others. And we went to the Roots Festival and on the Roots Festival too. And that is a festival where the African diaspora, those of us Black people living everywhere, are welcomed back into the Gambia for the Roots Festival. It's an English-speaking Muslim country. And the president at the time, Yahya Jammeh, he was brought up, he went to school in America, and he was brought up on the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's lectures in West Africa. So he hosted us beautifully, received us well. We were really just received as a special part of the delegation. And then we caught a boat over to the village of Jufere. And it was such a small delegation that we were all on the same boat. So we were on the boat with Mother Farrakhan and Mustafa and the family and the small number of people that went on the trip. And we got to the island, and there's a beautiful dedication. I got to sit in front of the 7th generation of Kunta Kinte's family. I'm fortunate to have photos of that. But it was interesting as the Brother Mustafa, who was our supreme captain, spoke words that his father gave him in the dedication. And then it was time to go into the mosque for prayer. Well, remember when I said women weren't allowed in the mosque?
Yes, ma'am.
Before. So it was kind of clear that it may have been the mindset that women weren't going to be in. Now, keep in mind, we have Mother Farrakhan in our delegation, whose husband erected this mosque. So they quickly came up with a system, put sheets up. They hung sheets up, separate two sides for the brothers and sisters to go in. Yes, and we went in too, because it's hot. It's Africa hot. I've been to Africa. It's Africa hot. I understand the meaning of that now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Africa hot. It's going to be 100-something during the day. And we went in and we had a beautiful prayer service, and they have a beautiful museum there that traces our slave history, because a lot of our people in Africa still don't know what happened to us. One side of it, they don't know the true history either, as well as us not knowing. So it wasn't until when you had Brother Tata on your show,
yes, ma'am,
you interviewed him, and he talked about that being one of his favorite places. The magnitude of us going on that trip with such a small delegation did not hit me until then.
Yes, ma'am.
That we were a part of history. And the world needs to know about that. They need to know about this mosque that the minister dedicated and built, the Alex Haley Mosque. And it is the most beautiful edifice on the island. And at the time, Alex Haley's brother was the ambassador to the Gambia. I don't know if he still is, but they received us, and they received us because the friendships that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has made around the world for us. So when you travel internationally and you represent yourself as a Muslim in the Nation of Islam,
yes, ma'am,
you are received in the name of the minister. And they will treat you as they treat him. But at the same time, the expectation is we are to look like him. And what I mean by that is we're to carry ourselves as a civilized, dignified people that we are, because that is how the people view us.
Praise be to Allah.
I started rambling, I think. I hope I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did. Walaikum salam to Naima. Brother Charles L. Muhammad says LC is on deck from Dallas, Texas, with my brother Joshua Muhammad. Starting off this great conversation. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
I have to walk for a moment because I see that my battery's going down.
Yes,
walk for just a minute to a charger.
That's fine. And while you all are watching, if you have a business that you would like me to promote or sponsor, J Imagination, Cash App, let me know what your business is, and we will get you all on our next episode, which we have this evening with Tadara Muhammad from Chicago, who was the drill instructor for all of those years and protecting the Muslim Mr. Farrakhan and his mother Farrakhan as well. Next question I have for you, Sister Donna, is you said Sister Ava, Minister Ava, was the first woman to be over a mosque, and not only a mosque, a regional mosque. What was the climate like inside the nation and outside the nation towards a sister being in that position?
Well, when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan installed Minister Ava in that position, he spoke to not only the brothers, but he spoke specifically to the sisters as well. And you can get that lecture.
Mm-hmm.
And he told the sisters, he said, she is opening the door for others to come behind you, but do not forget that she is opening the door. And he talked about how it is difficult when you're the first anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it was beautiful, the reception of her. And we also went through learning and growing pains, because what this does is break up or work to break up any vestiges of sexism. Because the thing about sexism is it can be overt, but it can be subtle like racism.
Yes,
what I mean by that is, as Black people, we know the subtle signs of racism. And you can never explain that to a white person, right?
Yes,
so we know when we're being profiled when we walk into a store. Or we know when we're held up and we might miss a flight at the airport because it was extra time to go through security on us. We know what it looks like. It's the same with sexism. We are taught in the nation, a nation can rise no higher than its woman.
Yes, ma'am.
So what that does is it took any misconceptions away that people may have, because see, that example wasn't just for the Nation of Islam. And it wasn't that she was appointed just as a regional minister. This has not happened in Islam. This does not exist in the Islamic world.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So it's bigger than the Nation of Islam.
Yes, ma'am.
And it represented what I see as starting the fullness of the return of the woman into her rightful position.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're taught how to handle women in positions of authority. So we had ups and downs, bumps and bruises, high times, and that part is just like any other person who comes in and has a honeymoon phase.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But we learned so much under her, because it is a little different when you have a woman, because what comes along with a woman is that nurturing spirit of mother that is just in us. And so she had a very nurturing spirit. And from that, she set a legacy of relationships. A lot of successful marriages came up out of the example that she laid down, because this was not long after she had published Real Love. And she spoke heavily on relationships, so that the mindset of strong families, strong nations was the environment that was established, and it was very much promoted. And again, there are many great examples of those that came up under her through that. Then there's those of us that had to struggle with ourselves. But it's good because it became a cleansing process, because sometimes we don't know what's in us until we're faced with it.
Yes, ma'am.
I might not know I have something sitting on my heart until that which is sitting on my heart comes face to face with it. So she grew us, she elevated us, and many of us took advantage of that. Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am, I can. I can see.
We took advantage of her being amongst us, because this is also the woman whom the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan revealed the study guides through.
Yes, ma'am.
Self-improvement, the basis for community development.
Yes, ma'am.
To sit with her, to nurture her. So it was an exciting atmosphere, but it was a learning atmosphere too, and it was a change
Mm.
that opened the door. And so I'm grateful to be in the ministry as a
Praise be to
sister.
God. Yes, ma'am.
We
Yes,
have
ma'am.
Sister Student Minister Patricia in Holly Springs,
Yes, ma'am.
who Sister Minister Ava helped put in place and lift up
Yes, ma'am.
after her. So as the minister said, we're walking through those doors because she bust them open
Mm, mm.
by being the first. And he said again in the installment message, it is hard to be the first. So it wasn't all roses, but it was very few thorns.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Excellent, excellent. I had a question. I spoke with you earlier about you knew me and my family since we were younger, and my family made sure I went to extend you the greetings as well. But do you have any interesting stories of myself when I was younger that you may have seen when I was?
Yes. Now that you ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Because to me that says there's permission to put it out there.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
But I remember in particular a particular sister. You were young.
Yes, ma'am.
But you've always been a soldier though. It was in you. You were like a little supreme. That's what you were. And there was one particular sister who I won't mention by name.
Yes, ma'am.
She's an adult.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were a child.
Yes, ma'am.
As we are wont to do sometimes, as young men can develop little crushes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
on this sister who was married, and she shared experience with you. So I'm really kind of sharing more of her experience too.
Yes, ma'am.
And there was an event in Chicago, it was a little retreat, and you decide you're going to sign this sister's dance card. You were smitten with her.
Yes, ma'am.
You signed her dance card. You showed her around. You and though you were young, she said you chastised the brothers. They were giving the greetings to get attention, and you just went in like a little supreme.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
On them, you just were like, oh, smitten. And really each time you saw her and your mother would remind you, this is an adult sister. She is married. But I guess when you're younger, that doesn't matter.
Yes.
In our young minds, it's okay. Opportunity is always there.
Yes,
but you really were just the opportunities I had to interact with you. You were so mannerable.
Praise be to
and
God.
you could just see a little soldier in the making, striving. But it's funny because as we talked earlier about NOI Security, it dawned on me when I first told you, I was like, oh, I worked at NOI Security. You're like, I had no idea. I had to remember that you, trying to think, were you even in existence?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
During that time frame. And that's why it's so significant of what you're doing now. And plenty of people have stories of you running around, but you've always been a little soldier. And to see you rise up. I remember the first year that I saw you lead the drill team in the one in Atlanta. Not in Chicago, but in Atlanta.
Yes, ma'am.
I almost fainted. Oh my God. First of all, he's a grown-up.
Yes, ma'am.
Because as members of the nation and those who have had parents that have really sacrificed hard, and every believer sacrifices.
Yes, ma'am.
But I know that your parents made a tremendous sacrifice. I know that your father couldn't always be there because he was securing the man of God. And the thing is, so was your mother.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Wherever he was, she was right there too as the National Vanguard captain. So I know what it's like when you can't always be with your children.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
and all you can do is pray for them and pray that Allah takes care of them. And you're proof that the struggle is real, the sacrifice is real, and it's worth it. So to see you, and then you're now, though you weren't there, going back recording these histories.
Yes, ma'am.
You are now adding another part of history, as well as the legacy that you are going to build for your family behind you. So, but you know, even though you're young, warning out there to everybody, you can't go after the 10 or 12.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't go looking at 30-year-old sisters.
Yes, ma'am. This is time I have a question. This is the well, and I want to first of all thank you for taking time out of your schedule, and please give your family the greetings and let them know that we thank your husband and your children for their sacrifice.
Praise
what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh my gosh. Wow. You know, I don't know. I have to say, what I love about the Nation of Islam, which I guess leads to the legacy, is I don't have one path that I've gone down the whole time. And I want my legacy to be to show forth that the Nation of Islam provides us, it gives proof that we can handle our own, teach our own, and then lead our own, and we can separate and be fine. The reason I say that is because I'm one of the people, I'm not like, I wasn't security the whole time, or I haven't been this or I haven't been that.
Yes, ma'am.
I have gone down so many different paths in the nation. I am serving as a contributing writer with the Final Call newspaper.
Yes, ma'am.
My background wasn't in journalism, but I got trained up. Because see, we as Black folks got to know we can train our own.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't have to get the stamp from the institutions of this world.
Yes, ma'am.
Or of this Caucasian's world.
Yes, ma'am.
I am now becoming a photographer as a result of that experience, which I was not that before. I am in the ministry. Praise be to Allah.
Yes,
have
ma'am.
Ministerial training. We're not going through the theological schools.
That's right. That's right.
I was blessed to serve as the NOI director. And that helped me see the importance of education.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So it is real. We have to take our children out of this enemy's killing field, and we have to support our own so that no city has to say, well, we don't have one, or we don't go up to the 12th grade or what have you. Young Elijah Muhammad said, you can teach under a tree.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
As long as you're teaching about a universe.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, the opportunities I've had, I've learned protocol. I've learned discipline and security. So what I want my legacy to be is do what you want to do in your nation. We are freed up to do anything and take advantage of these experiences. Learn. You know, if you find your special lane, because some of us found our lane right away.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Got in it. But all those are still just signs of something down the road. We don't know what we're going to be.
Yes, right.
Yet, but we're going to get there. So I want us to, I'm always telling my children, try different things. Try it out. Try this area. Try that area. But more than anything, I love knowing the people of the Nation of Islam.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess my biggest legacy is I want it to be known that I was a citizen of the Nation of Islam.
Yes, ma'am.
And I tried out as many areas as I could find until I started fitting on the hat that I feel fits best and that Allah has me in the period for. This is a wide open nation. It's bigger than your city. It's bigger than your study group. But then to Black people in general, know that we are capable of going for our own and doing for our own and teaching our own.
Yes, ma'am.
My college degree was in psychology, but I didn't get anything out of that. All my real training and education came from my experiences in the Nation of Islam and what I was taught by people before me. So I don't know if that really is a legacy or what. I don't know.
No, absolutely. And absolutely you answered that question. Absolutely you answered that question. And my younger brother sends the greetings as well because he said, oh, you're interviewing Sis Donna, I'm going to come and make sure I give her the greetings as well. So my younger brother,
to Allah, please return the greetings.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I want to thank you again, and I want to thank everyone for watching this special edition of Off the Record. It will be on YouTube tonight. If you YouTube Joshua Muhammad Off the Record, like, subscribe, and share. And assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.